when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Woo! Hello, book clubbers. Hope you're dancing in your seat. It's time to talk about books, particularly the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm here with Lana Bashinsky. Hi, Lana.
Hello and good morning. I hope you are doing well for this. I think what feels comparatively short and sweet week from last week's very, very beefy chapters.
Yes, I agree. These ones were, I really enjoyed these chapters, but they were, they feel more streamlined in a certain way.
Yes.
But good stuff. We are in the fourth novel of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, House of Chains. And we're doing chapters 15, 16, and 17 this week. Hope you're reading along with us. But if not, we still have some fun for you because we always like to start the show with a non-spoiler topic, something to talk about that doesn't require keeping up with the reading. And this week, I have a topic that I've been meaning to bring up for a little while. I'm very curious how you feel about this, Lana, because here we are, fans of fantasy novels, reading fantasy novels for the book club now. And I think one of the tropes of a fantasy novel, certainly in recent times, is establishing a world where characters curse. But they curse in world, right? Fantasy cursing. I will tell you, on more than one occasion, I have said out loud, Barrowfend. Barrowfend. I happen to love Erikson's. He has a number of in-world curses, Hood's breath and the like. Barrowfend.
Are there normal curses in there too, or no?
I don't think he's ever used a sort of real world.
Yeah.
Although I think he said damn here or there. But I absolutely adore Barrowfend. I love Barrowfend. But I think this is a topic that can grate on people. It is a stylistic choice that can work or cannot work. And I'm very curious what your feelings about fantasy cursing is. Because there are authors like, I think Joe Abercrombie uses real world curses. He's throwing F words in there and, he just uses our language. And then other authors like Mr. Erikson, decide to create their own in-world curses. And I'm curious what you prefer, what you like, what works and what doesn't work for you.
I'm going to break a 2024 resolution I had of not overly criticizing Brandon Sanderson.
That didn't last long.
I am here. I'm here for in-world cursing. I am. I really do like the curses in the Malazan series. Folks in the show probably don't know because I do my best, but I like just cursing in general. And that I think people think is a bad habit, but I can't help myself. It's so fun to say a good curse word. I don't know what it is about it. I like it. So when there's a delicious curse words in world in the book, I'm into it. I like it, especially when it feels right and it feels resonant and it feels tied to the culture and not formulaic. So on the other hand, in-world cursing that I find incredibly tiresome because of the formula and because of how often it's used in Brandon Sanderson's novels, I find incredibly tiresome. It's basically, what's the world? What's a noun in the world? Now that thing is the curse. So in the Steelheart series, it's always, sparks. That's so sparking annoying. And it's too on the nose for being I can hear what word you meant by that. And it's not, there's no deeper meaning. It's just a word that's now a curse. And I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy
Right.
that at all. Yeah.
It does seem to be a fine line of working and not working, right? Because I think some of our actual curse words are patently ridiculous, right? There are some curse words.
It's tough to talk about without being like
I know,
content warning.
yeah, I know. We try to keep these videos family friendly, even though who knows how many young people are watching. But I think that's our intent. But like son of a bee, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to call somebody, right? That's just a really there are things that just are ingrained in us that we don't question anymore, but they are patently kind of like if that didn't
hear
exist,
the history. I can hear the history of where calling somebody that. Somebody would be like, my mother? How dare you?
Right.
Whereas now it's a symbol. It's not anything other than I recognize that you're cursing.
Right. And so I think it's hard when you don't have that history, right? You are in a fantasy novel establishing that history. One of the things I've heard Erikson say in interviews is that there's an added layer of difficulty in writing fantasy, because if you are writing a modern literary work and you say so and so went to Paris, we all go, oh, Paris, okay, that connotes this and this and this. We have those associations built in. The author doesn't have to do any work to make you feel what Paris is like, right? But if you're a fantasy novelist and you say, you're going to some made up place, the author you have no context to bring with you as the reader. The author has to do all of that heavy lifting. And I kind of feel like that applies here with cursing as well. And I think that's one of the things that Erikson does so well, right? Is that his curses, like Hood's breath, or a character will say something like, "Oh, Hood's left foot," or something.
Or it'll say, "Hood, take me."
Yeah, exactly. And he's done all that work we understand that Hood is the god of death, and and we understand why that would be. It does feel like it's motivated from this sense of history and context, and I think that's why it works. But I also think there is something necessary in finding syllables that work.
Yes.
Right? The right syllables have to be at play. It has to feel good in the mouth to believe that these people would use that as a curse. You know what I mean?
I think that, like, I absolutely know what you mean. And I think it's interesting because if you were like, what are the things that would make up a curse word? I would think like hard consonants most of the time, and like a sharpness, a cacophony to it.
Yeah.
There's like an edge. But like you said, Berufend is a great one.
And it doesn't have
but
those
it's like very
qualities.
Beautiful. It like does not have those qualities at all. So I don't even know, like, oh, here's the formula for making a good set of letters, syllables that go together. I don't know. There's something about it that's like intrinsic to, like, does it taste good? Like, I'd love to know if Erikson, while he's doing this, is he like saying them out loud and being like, that one doesn't sound enough like a curse? Like, don't you practice like stubbing your toe and seeing what pops out? Like,
I don't know. It's so interesting because I'm also sometimes put off when authors use our curse words too. Like, it also feels a little gratuitous or unnecessary. And I don't know, there's like, it's hard because there's no hard and fast right answer that it's always going to work. It just has to kind of make sense in your world. Yeah. And I think it's a particularly tricky situation because, I remember when I was first watching the Battlestar Galactica reboot back in the early 2000s.
I still haven't seen it, so.
It's great. Just don't watch the last season. Watch up to the last season and then just stop and be like, oh, they never finished it. But I would say gods all the time, because they pluralize everything in that show was, gods damn it. And, it was just pluralizing it. And I just thought that was so elegant as a way of othering their universe, but
Mm.
also making it feel authentic, right? It still seems right. And I think that's something authors do a lot in fantasy worlds, because often fantasy worlds have multiple gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just the pluralizing of it feels like sometimes just enough to give it that we're in a different place, we're in a different universe sensibility, but not making it feel so foreign that it sticks out like a sore thumb, like you were talking about with Sparks and stuff.
Sure.
Or sometimes if it just sticks out so much, you're like, just
especially
goofy.
in the context of that book, again, not to always bring it back here, but like it's set 10 years in the future in
Yeah.
Chicago. Why is everybody suddenly saying Sparks? It like doesn't
Right.
make sense. It's infuriating to me, actually.
Yeah, I think this is one of those tiny details in fantasy and sci-fi that can have a huge impact and is really hard to get right.
Yeah,
And
it can have a huge impact. I think it can have a neutral impact and just make you feel like immersed and like, oh, interesting, and like have these little bites of history through the cursing. And then I think it can have a huge impact in my general tolerance of the book.
Yes. Yeah. And it's because people do exclaim, right? People do exclaim things that don't serve any other purpose than being an exclamation of frustration or angst or whatever. And so you need to have that outlet. You need to have that mode of expression for your characters. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard.
Well, it's interesting because I also think there's books, like you and I have talked about our shared love of Stephen King, I think, on the show before. But like Stephen King, he's got like his main character almost always is a JC kind of cursing kind of guy.
Yeah.
Every single time, that's how the main character curses. And I'm like, that must be how Stephen King talks.
Yeah, totally.
It must be how Stephen King talks. But it doesn't, even though it's like always the same, that's the main character. That's what they say.
Yeah.
That like doesn't, I would say, I think there could be a little room for improvement there, but I don't mind it. I find it like a weird, charming quirk. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything's personal preference. I know there are people out there who love the different curse words through Sanderson novels. I can't stand them. But like if that's what like gets you in the world and makes you feel like this is the thing that I wish were a part of my life because it's like a cute thing, but still felt like a curse to me, then I'm like, great, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, this could be a whole other topic we could do another time, but I'm very impressed with how Erikson handles that, and also other things like measurements and time.
Mm-hmm.
He uses bells instead of hours, and paces instead of feet or whatever, and hand width, and a man's height and all that. It's like everything. He thinks of everything as its own in-world, and I'm just so impressed with how it works for him. Like he does everything well, but
yeah. To sort of cap this off with one of the most interesting books by way of like measurement and speech and feeling like a very different world that becomes very comfortable the more you read it is I think the first book's called The Shadow in Summer. It's the first book of the Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. I recommended this book. I think it was maybe the first book that I recommended on the show because I'd so recently read it. It was still stuck in my mind. But everything in that book, the language, how they curse, how they insult people, everything is paired with like a physical pose that they're taking, and that is like described quite heavily at the beginning of the books, but eventually he describes it less and less because you just sort of know what's happening, and he only calls it out in these key moments. But measurements are done through almost all of time is measured through like where the candle is burnt to through the day. So there's like, you can picture what the world looks like with everybody having a candle, which is their clock. It's not heavy-handed. pardon the play on words, because there's hands. There's lots of hands. So it is heavy-handed, but the the immersion is so
Yeah.
fascinating and so interesting. And people who like this kind of stuff and like that kind of world building, I would love to hear if anybody else is. I don't know anybody else who's read that book personally.
Oh,
But
I think it's pretty
excellent.
popular. The Long Price Quartet. I've
Yeah.
seen it recommended quite frequently.
Ooh,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great.
Yeah. And if you have great examples of good cursing in fantasy world or that kind of thing, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to get your comments. But I don't want to spend too much time on it. Beru Fend. I take too long on the opening topic because we got a lot to get to. So let's jump right in and start with spoilers starting now for chapter 15 of House of Chains. We start with the 14th Army, and they're dealing with the fallout of the Chain of Dogs. They continue to be dealing with this. They are being pursued by a tribe, and then we find out that tribe is actually the Burned Tears, the Kundril. I want to say.
I said Kundril.
Kundril. That sounds cool too. Who we recall from Dead House Gates, the second novel, being at first a antagonist in line with Corporal O'Dom, but then switching sides and helping defend Coltane and the Chain of Dogs. And they continue to pay respects to who they call the Black Wing. Is it Black Wing? I think.
Mm-hmm.
They refer to Coltane that way. So we have this, I think, this really beautiful moment where, we know that Temuel has been having a hard time, or Temuel has been having a hard time as this young leader of the Wiccans, sort of asserting themselves and being, the leader. And we have this amazing moment where Gaul, the war chief of the Kundril, presents this huge army to the Wiccan, and Temuel's like, I don't know what to do, and looks at Strings/Fiddler and is like, what do I do? And I just thought that moment was awesome.
I loved it. There's so many little nuancy things from it's Fiddler. I feel like there's some amount of time where I'm like, how long has it been? Fiddler in my brain was always like kind of like a younger, wacky dude. But in this book, he's like the seasoned, grizzled, sort of like.
I think he was
older.
Always supposed to be seasoned and grizzled.
Yeah, I imagine that he must have been. But because he's a sapper and because there's like a wildness to sappers in general, I always pictured him as younger. And he very much feels more like his age in this book to me.
Yeah.
So I like seeing Fiddler, like no matter what, like, his age not actually mattering that much, but there's a maturity to him and a gravitas that he carries that it's interesting to see him being in this sort of mentorship space the whole time.
Yes. I mean, in this chapter in particular, he is very much too old for this hood. You know what I'm saying? I didn't do it right. But you know what I'm saying? This S, he's too old for it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But the subtlety of like his actions and not wanting to like step in, but like make sure that Temuel has this moment. But then also like how important it is to get like these 3,000 basically like seasoned pros, seasoned soldiers. They've seen battle. They know what's up. It like infused into this army of folks who've never seen combat in their lives kind of thing is like a very impactful thing of Temuel having to take charge of something when he is on the side of, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that scene where he constantly looking over to Fiddler and being like, what do I do? And Fiddler's like, you say words. And
I like Fiddler's just like a little
say the words.
Something.
And he nails it. He nails it. He's like, Wiccan clan, he like gives a cool speech, and we hereby welcome you. I was like, yeah, good job, Temuel. And then the dude's like, maybe we should, we should have some food. He's like, food? We're having a feast, baby. Let's do this. So the next scene is Gamut walking through the feast, and then everybody's like, did you drink the milk? Don't drink the milk. Don't drink the fermented milk. Bad idea, Jeans.
If you drank the milk, let me tell you, you will never drink the milk again.
Do not
I don't think it's immediate, but I forget who he's talking to. He's like, well, like half the soldiers are drunk, and then half of them are whatever, like have seen this before, or like some amount have seen it before. And he's like, what about the other amount? And he's like, they're dead. I'm just kidding.
It's just a joke.
Kidding,
it's a joke, bro.
I can tell by the way you reacted. That was not great timing, but it was a funny joke.
I love this this little musing we have in the scene also, where we're talking about patterns and how the land itself is a pattern that rises and falls, and it certainly seems to, from my interpretation, seems to come from Erikson's, own experience with archaeology and seeing how, the land tells a story, and it does have these cycles. And I just love that. And then relating that to the stars and how there's a lot of stuff recently in this novel where people are kind of coming to the realization that there's like other planets and galaxies. I'm like, man, there's kind of like this faint hint of a sci-fi layer in the universe that's developing in these books.
Yeah. But just to add more context, because I jumped ahead as I want to do, this is talking with his name's Gall, right?
Yeah, War Chief Gall.
War Chief Gall is around the fire, and he's, I think, already drunk or had definitely indulged in the feast that
he's had some milk.
He's had some milk, all right. And he's saying, is Gamut's like, why are you here? Really? Like, that, just FYI, now that you've committed yourself to the cause, that these people don't know what they're doing. And he's like, it's okay. I've seen you'll be successful. My shamans say you're going to be fine.
It's going to be hard.
You'll be okay. You'll always be looking for what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But everything's fine. And then talking about why he sort of believes his beliefs. And I really like that. I really like the belief in the beliefs is not like because of the magics,
right?
It's the beliefs of the magics, and there are magics in this world, but again, Erikson adding like a layer of groundedness to it. This magic is born in the patterns of the world, in the repetitions of history. Do you think you're the first people to walk here? There's bones under your feet. There's cities under your feet. There's the stars in the sky. That's old light.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very beautiful and powerful moment.
Agreed. So well said. And I also like that Gamut's like, I don't believe in any of this,
Yeah.
It's cool. It's a cool juxtaposition. But then, yes, Gamut meets up with Captain Keneb.
Can I say one more thing about that last bit that is so interesting? Is like, it's sort of a flip of the religion, just because the way that, Gamut's like, I don't believe in any of this. I don't believe in your shamans.
Yeah.
But like what the shaman is describing is the reality of history. The stars are old light. So it's not like the religion is a fanatical thing that's based in faith. Gamut's non-belief of the shaman magic is a life more of faith than reality. It's very interesting.
I love that. Yeah, you're totally right. It's very interesting, the flipping of expectations there.
Yeah.
So this discussion with Keneb, and we get a couple other characters we haven't seen in a while. The doggies, the little puppy dogs.
Puppy dogs.
Bent and what's the name of the other one? Anyway, the two dogs that have survived and that were brought back to life at the end of Deadhouse Gates. And they make some observations about Gessler Stormillion truth. And they're like, did they make a pact with a god? Not supposed to do that as a soldier, which I thought was like this throwaway line, but it made me think, man, that does seem like a pretty reasonable army rule. Is like, okay, we're all part of the army. Nobody can make a pact with a god and get super powerful. Okay, we all agree? We're all cool with that?
We all agree we're the same level. We're marching on behalf of someone already.
Yeah.
Don't split your allegiances.
It's just going to cause so many problems if you are talking to a specific god.
And how many times did it happen before they made the rule? That's what you got to wonder.
That's what you got to wonder. The rule's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Keneb, there's all this discussion of his level of trust and whether he, is a deserter or not. And he's like, I deserted to save my family, man. You would have done it too. And then he admits to kind of knowing where Kalam is, that he wasn't, he was on it. He wasn't with all the other bridge burners. He was there. He was on his way to confront the Empress. And that he was actually the one that's saved Keneb.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
There's a couple of pieces of this conversation with them being like, oh yeah, I was Kalam, actually one of the bridge burners. And it's like, what? Like,
yeah.
it's such like, Keneb's so chill about it. Like, anyway, yeah, as a deserter, he's like, I don't want to know. And then it's like, the more Keneb talks, I feel like the more Gamet's like, what is happening? Who are you?
Yeah, totally. He's like, you did what? And with who? Yeah. It's the other dog's name is Roach. Roach.
Yeah.
The two adorable doggies. And Fiddler's like hanging out at the campfire and sees Roach with a bone that he says if it had teeth and an appetite, it would be eating him.
Yeah.
It's like bigger than the dog. I love that. Yeah. And they're kind of trying to wonder why they're being punished because they're in the back.
I loved that. I like how quickly they were like, Gessler and Stormy crew, suspicious, huh? And like immediately you cut to, okay, they've been put to the back of the army and they've been there for some time. And the description of, we've been spitting dust for days was like great. It was just great. What a great transition.
Totally. And then we have this fun interaction. I love Gessler and Fiddler's relationship where he's like, Gessler's like, you can lie to everybody else, but you're not lying to me, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this, this level of kind of honesty and seeing through the facade, and Gessler's like, oh, you've been wanting to desert for a long time, haven't you? You've been wanting to peace out and leave. And it's not because of you and in what you want. It's because you're too intimidated to actually be a leader now. There's people underneath you and you don't want to have to deal with that kind of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was cool.
I also love just like how overt the peering through the facade is, because the dialogue, what's the name?
Gessler.
Gessler will be like, Fiddler, blah, 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 blah. And then it says Strings replied with. Yeah. So like the narration is still Strings, but he says Fiddler every time. I love that. I love that.
So good. Yeah. And then we have this stuff about Fiddler being able to hear the Tano song. He's like, he walks over and sees Nil and Nether, and they're kind of doing this
just before
ritual.
That, did we follow the dogs before that?
Follow the dogs.
So I think it's Gamet maybe and Keneb. Like somebody comes and they're like, "Oh, I'm following these dogs."
Oh yeah.
Does that happen before this?
No, that's this. Yeah, that's this conversation. Yeah.
Okay,
great.
With
Keneb. Yeah.
The conversation with Keneb. Maybe I'm jumping, but there's like, it sort of ends in like a huge bomb drop, I think, if I recall correctly. I hope I'm not jumping ahead. But they walk and they follow the dogs. There's like the dogs are searching for something. They go searching every night, and it's sad. It's so sad because I think they're looking for Coltane, their buddy.
Oh, right.
I think they're looking for Coltane, and so it's like they're taking pity on these dogs missing their master.
Yeah,
and they're like, interesting. And then I think it's there's the two G names, and I'm always worried I'm messing them up. I think it's Gamet who's like, it'd be so weird and even sadder, honestly, if the dog was looking for Coltane, because anybody who has eyes and a brain can already tell Coltane's already here.
Yeah.
And then it's like, anyway, next chapter. And I was like,
well, I took that as being metaphorical, in that Coltane's the shadow of Coltane is hanging over everything. That Adjunct Tavor is saddled with this notion that she can't do anything. She can't claim ownership of this army. She can't claim ownership of this land. She can't claim ownership of anything because everybody is still aligned with Coltane. Everywhere they go, all the people they run into are like, we still respect Coltane. They're walking through, all these monuments and honorable
walking back where he walked.
Yes, but they're seeing the residual effect of his life, and it is so potent, the amount of his lasting effect, that no one else can. There's no other force that rivals it. He is revered.
Yeah.
And because of that, no one else can kind of claim ownership of it. And so that's what I took was like, he's everywhere. You're looking for Coltane. He's in every single person here because they can't stop thinking about him.
I think that you are right. But and maybe it's just there's been so many little things that my like suspicion meter is wacky. But didn't they say, I mean, they said earlier in the book, a child was born, and the implication was that Coltane was reborn. IMO. Earlier. I don't remember what chapter, but I could go find it at some point and post in the Discord. But they said something about a child was reborn.
Yeah.
Coltane's back. They like said it pretty overtly earlier, I believe. And so I guess I took it at, I think I like the reading of the metaphor, and I think you're right that it is a metaphor, but I would also wouldn't be surprised if literally he were back somewhere among the army.
I also would not be surprised. It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But I think part of the takeaway from these scenes, I think the intended takeaway is like just how widespread the ramifications of what happened with the chain of dogs is. Like how literally all these thousands of people, clans, these, they're walking through all these lands. They're seeing what people have done to honor him, what people have done to remember what happened, what people have done to kind of pay their respects. Right. And I think that's that Tavor came in as like, okay, my army, my things, Coltane's dead. Now it's my responsibility. It's like, no, it's not that simple. He may be dead, but his legacy lives on, and you have to reckon with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so speaking of people who are dead, but their legacy lives on, Nil and Nether are hanging out with a bronze bowl trying to talk to Sormo Enath.
Yeah.
Like, Sormo!
Hey!
Oh, buddy!
Hey, remember us?
I thought it was cool that it was butterflies hanging around because the death of Sormo Enath is so memorable with the hand and the butterflies and all that stuff. And they're trying to think about it. And Fiddler's like, would you hear that song? And they're like, oh, you hear? It's Sormo. And Fiddler's like, it's not Sormo.
I'm not positive it's Sormo, but what are these mobs?
And he literally hears words in his head of something saying, I have changed. I am not what I once was. Don't worry about what I once was, but now I am.
But now we are awakened.
Yes. And together we will slay the goddess.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
That don't sound so positive.
It doesn't sound like Sormo. Yeah. But it's interesting to me because we'll get to the other person that's hearing the Tenno song, right? But that clearly there's something else going on here with regard to that song and the whirlwind and some other thing, some other force, or maybe the elder gods or whatever, the spirit of Raraku. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know if you have a sense of what it is yet, but there seems to be some other force that is now in play.
The thing I think is interesting is like slaying the goddess. Like when people say like the goddess, which the only goddess that comes to mind, even though there are many, is Burn.
Oh, interesting. That's intense. That feels like a level of magnitude that I was thinking it was Shaik.
Oh, duh.
I mean,
you're probably right. I was like, who's the goddess? The whirlwind goddess, I guess, would be the thing.
Right.
But as soon as I heard that, I was like, man, why are we trying to kill Burn again? She already dying. Leave her alone. She's tired.
I put the Burn problem at layer. We have layers of intensity of magnitude of and it's real macro. It's this is like a quick bend problem, a real big.
That's really funny. Okay. And then I love Fiddler coming out of that and being like, do you hear it? It's so loud. And both of them are like, hear what? it's horrifying in a way. Like
It
that kind of
is.
thing of like, like no matter what, if music, like something being like this loud sound in your ears that nobody else can hear, that feels like a horrifying thing to me.
Yeah. Well, I also feel for Nil and Nether, who are like, we're doing everything we can just to have a little bit. You hear it? What? Why not us?
Well, the
What?
thing that I'm wondering is that, like, so Fiddler's like, do you hear it? It's so loud. Like, stop playing your bowl or
Yeah.
whatever. They're like, we're not playing anything.
Stop playing your bowl.
I pictured them like,
Yeah. Woo, woo, woo,
yeah,
woo. Yeah.
and then being like, we're not playing anything, and that makes me be like, did Fiddler hear? Like, did Nil and Nether think that Fiddler was hearing something that he wasn't?
Yeah.
I mean, he
think
heard this voice.
They
but-
thought that they thought he was connecting with Sormo like they wanted to, but
Yeah.
he doesn't think, he thinks it's something else is going on. And I think he's right that
Yeah.
All right. So then we get to the Vathar River crossing, which is, the site of this horrible massacre that happened in Deadhouse Gates. And we see how...
Is this where Sormo died?
Oh, you're going to ask me that?
I think
so. It probably makes sense that they're trying to contact Sormo where he died.
Yeah.
It's certainly where a bunch of people died.
Yeah. I'm like, that was like one of the big massacres, was one of the places where Sormo died. So I assumed it was the same place. I was going to get a gut check.
It makes sense that would be where he died, because that would be why they were trying to contact his spirit there.
Yeah.
But what they see now is, all of these sacrifices that have been that are hanging from the trees, that are kind of causing all these maggots to infest the blood-strewn mud, and it's so gross.
Ugh.
But I love this little micro problem that Erikson establishes here, which is like, hey, they're doing this to honor Coltaine, but more importantly, to bless us. They're giving us their blessing, the 14th Army, as we march back through here. They're like, hey, we're doing something super nice, but it's making it way more difficult for us to move through here, and also dangerous. So we're actually going to have to destroy this, but we don't want to offend them, because we appreciate the blessing and all. It's like super nice blessing, but a blessing has lots of maggots on it. It's a maggot-filled blessing.
It's a pretty gruesome it's a blessing that makes me feel like I'm get diseased. I like there's like several layers of micro problem solving that happens in this moment. Okay, we have to do this without offending the people. We should blow it up because we have to be able to get across more easily.
Yeah.
And we have to do it and make, Tavor think it's her idea.
Right.
To do it. And then it sort of is like, we go backwards out to the extent of the problem, and then we like roll right back the other direction again, with Tavor being like, let this guy tell me his own ideas later. Like, she sees right through everything. Like, I feel like I really feel for Tavor in that she's like so stern and like intimidating. She's the Empress's number one kind of situation. But like we were saying, this is Coltaine's army. This is not her army, but she's tasked with doing this thing. And she clearly has like an overwhelming, not overwhelming, but like a deep concern for her family that she knows is alive. And that must be a constant on her mind, but she can't show it, is just such a crappy place to be. I feel like at any point in time, she's just must be feeling so helpless, but having to put on this stern face and have people be like, anyway, if you thought it would be a good idea, I don't know, I'd tell everybody it was your idea. It's like, just shut up. Just we can talk about things. It's and it's in these glimpses. Like, we never talk with Tavor for very long, but I feel so strongly for her. It's
and so interesting too, where in previous novels we have been thinking, well, she is awful. She threw her sister into the gulag. It's what a terrible person. Now we're like, oh no, it's hard for her. Things
are difficult.
I love how Erikson constantly makes you question your allegiances that way, and the motivations of people, and everything's hard, and there's no easy choices. Very, very cool. But then we get this wonderful little moment with Fiddler and Cuddle, where we get that peek back into, Strings, Fiddler, he's still a sapper at heart. He still likes to just blow some stuff up. You know, he's got this little moment of joy where he's like, "Oh, we're gonna pack this bad boy full of cussers," and then and they go flying through the air, and they're like, "No, we could have used fewer of them. Yeah, we didn't need that many."
I love that they're like talking about it's like, and then people being like, "You left it way like with not enough time. Like, what's the point of blowing something up if you're not even gonna look at the explosion?" And they're like covered in bloody sand, like trying to brush it off, but they're just covered in it. It's like so useless trying to get any of the ick off of them that they just blew up. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it felt like just this little moment where we get to let Fiddler have a little fun. You know, if not for any other reason than to just sort of like have a little moment of fun. I loved it.
Yeah. Me too.
All right. So then we are, back to Gamut's perspective. They're kind of approaching the wall of the whirlwind, and they're trying to discuss whether Shaik is going to impede their progress. And they have these two options where they think Shaik has two options as they see it, where she can either let them go through there and not fight them and wait, and not give them any battle experience, but also not find out their capabilities, or she can attack them as they go and try to
whittle them down,
but also give them some battle experience and let them gain confidence. It's interesting, right? It's interesting. I find this to be similar to sports, where it's like, do we rest our starters? Do we? That's kind of the notion here.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. All right. So that's the end of chapter 15. We start chapter 16 with our boy Kalam, who's still hanging out with Iskarol Pust, although hasn't seen him in a month or weeks or whatever it's been. And he is also hearing some singing. It's like, what is that singing? It's that crazy singing. It must be Mogora, Pust's wife, because she's constantly looking around for him. Where is he? Where is he? And I neglected to mention, he wakes up with this demon pop on him. The buckaroo.
Like
it's not demon. They're like little winged monkeys, right?
A mangy wild animal snuggling up on him
with a skin condition.
Yeah.
It's got like, he mentions that it has like a rash or something.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
And just the interaction where Mogora's like, I picture her talking in like a very sweet voice to the little goblin, then being like, "Oh wow, you think you're gonna shed your gross skin over the house? It's gonna mold everywhere? Oh, isn't that so funny that you think that?" And Kalam's like, "Where are you going with that gross thing? If you do," she's like, "What? It's my pet." He's like, "Yeah, you're gonna wring its neck. You're gonna kill it." And she's like, "And?"
That's
and
what
he's
I do.
like looking at all of the like mature ones in the background, like with their claws and teeth out, ready to do murder. Yeah, it's like a sweet moment of Kalam, a murderer, like an assassin, killer, caring for this gross little thing that he woke up and was like, ugh. I just liked it.
It's so fun. And every time Mogora like leaves the room, Pust is like, "Ha! She didn't see me." So the two of them leave and head toward the whirlwind. And Kalam's like, "Hey man, are you gonna help me like get through into the whirlwind?" He's like, tricky that, because the moment you breach it, Shaik will know.
Yeah.
She's got her feelers out on the edges of the whirlwind, and so what are we gonna do? We're gonna like distract her, and Pust is the master of distraction, which is cool.
This whole thing felt very funny to me because it's Pust like, well, first of all, we get Pust's greatness in being like, yes, make it think like it's his idea to leave. But then he's like, "I will help you. I am the best at doing this." And he's like, "Great." But then I'm like, did Pust do that, or did the demon do it?
Well,
or is Pust controlling the demon?
I had that same question. For a moment, I was like, did Pust turn into that demon?
Yeah.
Because, Pust is a disciple of Shadow. And so maybe like pulled the demon from the Shadow Warren, from the Shadow Realm, I don't know. But either way, it's funny. It's like, how are we going to get in? I don't know. Demon arrives, picks him up, sprints. No,
Well,
we're
we
through.
know, like Kalam, when he was like in the desert, when Puss showed up, I thought it said something about the demon. He could see it or sense it in Puss's shadow. So I feel like it's just been lurking around for a long time, but I don't know if Puss like knew that,
Yeah.
or if Puss was like, "I'll help you do it," and then the demon was like, "Not today, baby. You're going alone." Like there's like information I'm missing there, but it was interesting how quickly they're like, "All right, how are we gonna like?"
It's very funny. Where it's like, yeah, we need to think this through, and he just picks him up, and he's like, and he just feels like he's being very, very funny.
Yeah.
And also super interesting that Kalam and Fiddler both hear the Thanos song.
Yes.
And they're buddies.
Mm-hmm.
What's the connection there? What's that all about?
We haven't talked to any other bridge burners. Those are the only two that we've
yeah. Well, all the bridge burners got disbanded. There aren't any bridge burners anymore.
We haven't talked to anybody who was formerly recognized as a bridge burner.
The artists formerly known as bridge burner. Yeah. Yes. No Perrin in this book. Very little Perrin in this book.
Yeah. But the demon goes and basically dunks Kalam through a window and then pieces out.
Well, it's not even that. It's this like crack.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I'm not going to fit. Ah! And he squishes him through. Very funny. But then he like leaps over the top. It was rad. It was super rad. All right. Chapter 16 continues. We're checking back in with our boy Crocus / Cutter. He's got Apsalar passed out in his arms, unconscious and injured in his arms. And he and Cotillion are there, and they see this badly burned mage from the battle that we had talked about last week. And Cotillion identifies her as Hall, Hawl, Hall. Oates, nowhere to be found.
Oh, boo.
Okay. All right, fine.
She was, what's his face's wife?
Yes, Admiral Knox's wife.
Admiral Knox's wife.
We heard about only in reminiscing. We haven't ever seen her before, but she was a big deal. Super big deal.
She was part of the OG crew. She was part of the info dump we got where he was basically like, oh yeah, me, Dude Jack, Whiskey Jack, Hall, Dancer. We were buds. It was like...
Yeah. But everybody thought she had died a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long dead. But then she is showed up. Now she's dead. And Cotillion obviously still... Yeah, super feels. Like the god still has some Dancer in there because... we have this really lovely moment where he's like stroking her hair and really sad, and he pulls her talon necklace off and throws it at Cutter, and it lands on Apsalar as he's holding her. She was the leader of the Talons when the Talons were in full effect, when Kellanved and Dancer were human and running the Empire. And Cotillion's like, okay, I think I figured out what's going on with this? Who's killing the Talons? I think I figured out what the deal is. I want you guys to go meet up with another agent. We don't know who. And we're going to deal with it. And then there's this amazing moment where he's like, he picks up Hall, and Cutter has Apsalar. He's like, look at us.
Yeah, look at us, huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
We're so, look at us. Just a couple of dudes carrying nearly dead
dudes
assassins.
Carrying babes passed out in dudes' arms,
dead assassins. And Cutter's like, no, I'm nothing like you, it's merely a coincidence. Very funny.
Yeah, I really like it.
Then Shadow Throne shows up. Amanas is here, formerly known as Kellanved. Amanas. And I just like saying it. And the interesting kind of little moment between the two of them where he's like, oh, Hall, huh? Oh, man. Why does everybody that follows us die? That sucks. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, even worse than that, I saw Traveler. And he's like, Traveler? Traveler's here? So we don't even know what Traveler is, but we find out very quickly that Traveler was like the third homie. The trio. It was Kellenved, Dancer, and Traveler.
Mm-hmm. I wanted so badly to go back and look at that same OG info dump that Admiral Nock was giving to be like, is there one of these names that was like, and he was tighter with them than we were? Or like, was
Yeah.
Traveler one of those names and I just forgot? Very interesting. Traveler is a mystery that I am excited to hear more about as we go forward.
Agreed.
But I have
And
no suspicion. I have no mental connections. He seems like a totally new guy.
Yeah. But interesting that Shadow Throne and Cotillion are both kind of scared of Traveler.
I
Which is
mean,
interesting.
by the sound of it, and my assumption is that just because it's like them two, my brain says they screwed him over.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah, we're gonna ascend. Bye. Wait, what about me, buddies? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's actually only two. It's actually only 2-bedroom Azoth house.
A 2-bedroom Azoth house. Sorry, there's bunk beds and they're spoken for, and there's only 2 keys. And sorry, bud. Sorry. Yeah, and we get that, by the way, through Absalar's memories that she still has of dancing. That's got to be awkward when you are, you have somebody else's memories and they're, you're hanging out, they're hanging out, but you have part of them in you. That's awkward.
Like, yeah, we're different, but we're the same. And it was another moment where I really liked where like Absalar sort of comes to and she's like, what's up? And she's like, oh, another mission kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, Crocus, don't be this way. And the fact that she calls him Crocus, again, it just reinforces that he's like, call me Cutter now.
Yeah. Cutter's my cool name. Yeah. Yeah. And she's disappointed that he's going to be following. I mean, obviously she's been screwed over by Cotillion big time. So you can understand her position.
Yeah.
But okay, then we have one of my favorite scenes of this section, which is back checking with Lestara, Yale, and Pearl. And they're kind of doing this awesome little buddy cop detective show.
I don't think we touched very much on them last week, but I love their dynamic of
Me too.
Like Lestara just being like, you're the worst. I hate being here. And him being like, my brains are so big. Is delightful.
But it's also very fun to see them walking through places that we know very well from previous novels and trying to piece back together what happens. But we, the reader, know exactly what happened because we experienced it in real time the first time. I find that to be very satisfying. That like, oh, what is this? A body? And it's like, I know what that body is. I remember. That it's very cool. So they've come upon the partial remains of Grylen, the Divers rat thing that messed up, that killed Culp.
He was like posing as like the friendly tinker, and he had like his bubble, right?
Yes, that's right. And he had the like really disturbing zombie servants, and we see some of those. The clam, not to be confused with calm. Who I was like, they found calm. I was like, oh no, it's clam, not calm. And they're just trying to piece it together. Like, what's the deal here? There's a warrant of fire opened up. That's crazy. Oh, look at this body. Oh, wait, what? Hood himself came and collected the soul of this, but it's just an empty shell. It's like, oh, that's Bowden. I know who that is.
The timeline here is so interesting because it felt like something was happening in real time, but I think it was just the Pearl being trepidatious in like feeling the vibes that Hood left behind. I love the description of like they're walking and Pearl is leading, but as he's leading, he's walking slower and slower and slower and slower until he's barely moving at all. And then there's just a tension.
Yeah.
And, Lestara knowing well enough not to be like, what are you doing? Just existing in that tension until it felt clear that Pearl sort of broke free from it. And then him being like, oh my God, Hood was here. But I couldn't tell if he was saying Hood was just here. I assume not, but it.
Yeah, I think he was saying like, oh my gosh, he goes, yeah, Hood was here. She's like, yeah, obviously there's dead bodies. Like, no. Hood came and collected this one personally.
Yeah.
Super cool. And then Lestara like does that cool, logic piecing together the timeline herself and realizes, oh, that must mean Felicin is with
the whirlwind.
Yes, is with the. She's not put together that Felicin is Shaik, because how could you?
But she's with the whirlwind army.
Exactly. She and Hiborek are with the whirlwind army, and if we want to find her, we have to find them.
I feel like there's still moments that when I am reading stuff like this and people like putting little pieces together, I can like hear the positive dice rolls from Disco Elysium in my head.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Your investigation check.
Yes. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Nat 20'd. All right. So then next we check back in with Onrak and Trull. And they have Onrak is realizing certain things, getting his memories back, and it was like, oh, I was a painter. I was a sick painter.
Illegal painter.
I was contraband painter.
Yes.
I painted. He was the Banksy of his time. He was just breaking the law. So interestingly, in the cave, in the dark, where no one could see, he would paint Kalava, who we know is Tool's sister, and he painted her so good. How good was it? So good that it like immortalized her. Yeah. So this is the explanation. We had that question, remember, 2 novels ago, I think.
We're like, why is she still alive if she didn't go through the thing?
Exactly. She wasn't part of the ritual of immortality, the Talon. How come she's still hanging around? Well, he painted her real good.
Real good.
So good.
And I love like looking at or talking about the painting and having these memories and being like, so you were in love with her. And he says something about like obsession is like, is not great, basically, right. Yeah. Which I think is like an interesting like take on who he was when he was mortal. And like, as he's learning these emotions again, it wasn't like he was smitten. He's like, oh, I just loved her so much. He's like obsessed with her. And it's there's like a little edge there in him framing it as obsession and not as love. That is like, ooh, that's interesting. Were you like you're a creep?
Yeah,
creep. So
yeah, well, and then he like got it on with a woman in the dark, and he didn't know who it was exactly. He's like,
who knows? But
I don't know. But I woke up with a lot of blood on me.
My last wishes before I was ostracized from my community, and then the ritual made me stay there forever, was some night bangings in the dark. Who was it? Who cares?
Does it matter really?
I gotta get a bone on before I get my bone on, if you know what I mean.
That's right. That's the Talon and Moss way. All right. So then they go, you know where we really need to go? I feel like the Unbound are the real problem. Mm-hmm. We should probably go find their store of weapons in the caves. You know, the flint weapons. Very unlikely that anyone would be there now. We'll go. We'll be the first people there. And so they head off into the hills, heading to find the place where the flint weapons are made. What could go wrong? And then we get a really interesting brief scene checking in with the Tistliosen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what are we doing with these guys? These guys? Still? These guys?
These guys, like, deeply out of their element. Just like, after their intro being like, it is us! Jerks from another realm!
And we are the jerks! You summoned a jerk!
And then basically, every, like, nasty little piece of wildlife that we've met so far comes and, like... gets them, and they're like, they don't know who we are yet, but they will. It's like, so great. And also so gross with those blood flies.
Oh
Like
man,
obviously
he's like,
biting them. You can
did
feel.
you get bitten? Did you get bitten by something? Yeah, it's still moving under the
Ugh,
skin.
so gross.
Anyway,
Ugh. Ugh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So their guardian is dead, which I'm thinking, correct me, I may be very wrong on this one, but I'm thinking that's the Oryx pet that we found out last week died. I'm thinking that's what the guardian was.
Yes. And to me, that says, you know, the Talon were going to be like, oh, they're going to put the pieces together and they're going to realize that their God's not there and they are going to be destroyed. They're going to be so sad when they realize
Yeah.
that. But instead, it seems to me like they're like, yeah, we know he's not like there,
Right.
but he
yeah.
had a guardian there. Like to me,
Yeah.
it tells me that they were well aware of the fact that Osric was not around.
Right. And they have to find, they're going to find the trespassers. And then our old buddy Icarium comes up and they're like,
Mhm.
Icarium, the maker of time, the slayer of the 10,000. We got to go find him. Let's
You
go
know,
find that
you know
guy.
who's going to help us, the jerks? Our buddy Icarium, notorious jerk.
Notorious jerk. Interesting kind of dun-dun-dun, like go find Icarium.
Mhm.
Then we get to chapter 17, which is one of my favorite chapters we've read so far in this novel. Just the
Mm.
entire chapter. I loved it. In fact, I'm finding Karsa Orlong is one of my favorite characters in the series.
Yeah.
And all of his chapters are some of my favorite chapters. Like I'm just, when we kind of hang out with Karsa for a while, I am so happy. So happy.
I agree.
And all of chapter 17 is Karsa again,
Mhm.
which is unusual, right? We had those first 4 chapters of the novel that were all Karsa, but then we've kind of been back doing our normal Malazan Book of the Fallen thing where each chapter is multiple people's POVs. And now chapter 17 is just Karsa again,
Mhm.
still on his quest to get a horsey. Just really wants a horsey. But he's in his flint shard cave, just working on that sword. And the description of making the sword is so rad to me
Mhm.
that he like loses track of time. He's working on it. It's hard. It's hot. He's sweaty. He's in the cave, but he's just like, I love this sword so much. It doesn't even matter if I'm hurting myself, if time goes by, I haven't eaten, I haven't had anything to drink. I just want to make the sword.
Cooking hot in here. And like the different, like the description of like the different techniques to make the different parts of the blade and
Yeah.
like the little chips and the flakes coming away from it versus like trying to make a grip that's not just going to shred your hands. And it's like flint doesn't want to have round shapes. It doesn't want to be what I'm making, and it becomes more and more difficult to craft this weapon. It's so cool.
And he's like, I wouldn't make it like this, except the gods told me that it's going to be unbreakable. So I'm like going to just make it, in this way that would normally invite being broken. It's so rad. So rad.
Mm-hmm.
And in making the sword so good, he makes the sword so good that it brings all the gods to the yard. The gods are like, whoa, 6 sword, bro.
They're like 6 sword. And then I love that they described it like if swords had a god.
Yeah.
And they just leave that sentiment out in the world, and it kind of ends.
Yeah. And they're, I love how the gods show up and they're like, bro, I know we are on the same page. You are awesome. We are awesome. Thanks so much for like doing all the stuff that you've done for us. You're rad. We're rad. We're both. We helped you make the sword. You made the sword. It released us. Now we're here. Everything's copacetic. We're like, let's just do a high five. And Carson's like, oh, I'll give you a high five through your neck.
I love that them being like, it's so much like, oh, you finished your craft? That's so cool. Let's take a beat. Take a knee, champ. Let's talk about, you know what else is pretty cool? God. The crippled God specifically. It's got like this vibe of like, Camp counselors coming in to overlook the progress and try
Yeah.
and get you in there.
It's that meme of Captain America turning the chair around and sitting down.
Exactly.
So you made yourself a flint sword.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And I was so happy with this scene because I remember, no, I don't remember if it was the last time or 2 times ago, Karsa sort of talking with them and like they're not face to face because he hasn't seen them, their actual physical presence, but us being like, Karsa seems like he's turned a new leaf and suddenly he's like interested in the like crippled god and his gods are like bring him in. And I was like, nah. And then he
I
sliced
had
him in half.
that same thought that we talked about it. Like, no, Karsa.
You were just getting so good. I mean, you've always been like entertaining, but like really resonant and like delicious sentences.
You realized some stuff. You turned a corner.
Yeah.
And now
you're not crippled in any way. So you're actually, it's illegal.
It's illegal.
I was so hype of him being like, so I told you my story. You know my story. You know I broke away from you. And I finally get to this place and I feel like I'm finding freedom and finding myself. And what is it you offer? More chains? I just is
incredible scene. The way he like dismantles their argument and they're like, he's like, you're not gods. It's like, what? We're totally gods. You know what gods have? Worshippers. Boom, mic drop. And he's like, no, that's not what defines gods. And you know what you did to your worshippers? You took from them instead of consoling them, providing solace for them. A god is there to help its people, to be a source of solace. And you wanted more for yourself. Mm-hmm. So awesome. You did not protect, you didn't offer comfort, you just added more and you asked for more chains. And that place that Karsa has gotten to is so rad. And that we were tempted into thinking, oh man, maybe he is going to go back to the dark side. Maybe he is going to be one of the crippled gods or pantheon in the House of Chains. Or maybe
he is just like, he took all these vows, right? Like what do those vows really mean to him? And maybe throughout it all, he's like, well, did I have half a brain in my head at the time? Yeah, but I made those vows, baby. So let's do it.
Incredible moment. Him, attacking Sibal, who is the one that collects all the children, all the flawed children
that were sacrificed, like flawed children that like so early in their life register that they have a flaw, and it's like, you got to sacrifice them so that they can go to my future army. Terrible. Yeah.
He sets all the souls of the children free. He murders her, or doesn't murder her. She can't be killed, but slices her and kind of condemns her to this awful existence for all of eternity, and basically tells the gods, like, stay away from the Tembalar. Do not approach the Tembalar. If I hear you say one thing to them, I'm going to murder all of you. So
and you know I can because you gave me this sword. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, not gave the sword, but like promised that it would be unbreakable. I love that. And so they're all like, yeah, okay. And they like piece out of there. And then it seems like he's just going to leave. And then he grabs like Sibal's head. He's like, you need the rest? And she's like, what? No. And he's like, shoves her head in a bag and is like, I'm so grumpy now. It's just so good.
I imagine it like her head and shoulder and one arm.
Me too.
It's just like this, like he's just like cramming it into his bag, and she's like, I
just love that he said, do you need the rest?
It's so good.
Of my body? I guess not.
I guess not. So good. And then he's like strolling out of there, and 2 jokers show up at the door, and he's like, smack, I am moving out of my way, knuckleheads.
I don't know who you are, but just with the flat of the blade, like throw them off the mountain.
It's so rad.
So good.
He's like, and then he's walking, he's like, wait a second. Who could that have been?
Should I go? It's a long way up.
It seems like one of those guys that I murdered on the boat. I've already walked this far. I'm not turning around. And then we cut to Onrak and Troll, and they're like, "Hey, we found the cave with the."
And they're like, "What was that? Was that a Tobler guy? Oh my god,
That dude hit me so hard.
So funny,
So funny.
Ugh.
And then Onrak is like, "I'm gonna go back in there," and Troll's like, "Wait a second, wait for me!" Ah, man! And he walks in and he sees him in the rainbow fire. And he literally like takes the other arm of Sybil and is like, "Sick! I could use this. I'm missing an arm." He's just like, I love it. So just this notion that Karsa Orlong slices Sybil in half, this, undead skelly bones, slices her crossways, takes a head and an arm, stuffs it in his bag, leaves. Other arm still there. Guy's like, "Oh, sweet. I need an arm." Just uses it. And we have Troll like, he grasped me with a pair of hands. Wait, a pair of hands? Good. I loved it so much. All right, so then we're back with Karsa, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna kill a deer with my sweet new blade. I know the blade wants to murder people, but I'm just gonna use it for food. I know it would be disappointing." He names a prairie after his two favorite bros. It's like, "I'm gonna name this Bayroth Delum."
I thought he named the sword Bayroth Delum.
No, I think he infuses them in the sword, so he can no longer hear them. They get like infused in the sword, and then he's like looking out at the prairie, and he's like, "This land is named after my bros."
My impression is that he infused them into the sword, but then he wanted the sword to have its own name, and he announced the name in a space that felt like it was made for him. It felt like the area that was
perhaps.
Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's what it felt like to me.
Well, either way, he no longer will hear their voices because now they're in the sword, but it makes the sword even sweeter.
Because he got that energy.
This sword is the coolest sword of all. And we've seen some rad swords already in this series. And then he comes strolling up to a Jagat, this kind of like bent over old Jagat dude named Sinigig.
Fun name.
Very fun name. Sinigig is like, "Hey, remember Aramala, who you freed from that boulder? She called me and she said, this guy is nice. This is a nice man. Go visit him. Help him get a horse."
Mm-hmm.
And I love how Sinigig talked, too. He had a very fun cadence.
Yes, I agree. And I like how many people in this book have like a fun cadence, but also are like, I don't know, they've got like a little gremlin energy. He's got gremlin energy to me, being on the rooftop and being like, "Yes, I've survived for a long time. You might be wondering, how did I survive? Well, this is my box."
Yeah.
And you might
like
be
a rock.
Looks like a rock. And you might be wondering, why would I use the magic? That's the exact magic that they were looking for. Well, it worked.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I used different magic.
Oh yeah.
But it's also a cooler. Like he's a guy hanging out with a cooler. He's like, "Well, what's it? Am I going to put it in there? Is it going to get hot? Hey, it's cold in here." Yeah, no, I dig my wine cold. Even
I prefer
my red wine. I like red wine cold too. This is my sick cooler. And you know what?
Give
I'll
it
get
a pour.
inside this cooler.
Give it a pour. Yeah, refilled instantly.
Pretty
Pretty
sweet.
sick.
Yeah, he's a cool character. I love Sinigig. And Sinigig's like, "You know who I really need to introduce you to? The horse lady." Because you're looking for horses. Who I'm going to pronounce her name as Fearless. Fearless, Phyrlis, Fearless.
Oh, I'm sure you're correct. I definitely, my brain was like, Phyllis. I missed the R.
And Fearless or Phyllis, I kind of like Phyllis.
I like Fearless.
Fearless.
Fireless.
I don't know.
I like Fearless.
Fearless is Tree Lady. She got stabbed with a spear that turned into a tree, and now she's all tree. It's like part
All
tree,
tree,
part
all
lady.
day. And they feed into each other. So the tree is taking her energy and she's taking the tree's energy. So it's a symbiotic.
And seems to
Into
be a
eternity.
very important tree because it's not only the tree that Ikariam wants for him to make a sweet watch. He wants to make a timekeeping mechanism, like a grandfather clock.
From the
I'm imagining.
heartwood.
Yeah, out of her very heart. She's like, no, how about you just make some bow and arrows? And he seems to be cool with that. He's like, okay, bow and arrows is cool.
And every single time he's like, hey, a tree lady. Hey, can I have your heart? And she's like,
No. I like how she talks about how she bargains with him. Like, what's the bargain there? I'll give you branches for arrows.
The bargain is like, okay, you can have one thing, or you can have this thing that you can continue to have because I can continue to grow. I feel like it's the bargain. I think it's interesting that we see like Ikariam brought up again.
Yes.
And in general, I mean, we know that Ikariam has this like, rage problem.
Yeah.
But every snapshot we've seen through other people's eyes of Ikariam in these couple chapters are not the pleasant fella in any way. Like him banging at the doors and screaming, and without Mabo there knocking him out, like he doing the murder. And I think this is like even the site of like nearby where he killed everybody, isn't it?
Yes.
Killed the 10,000, the big one.
The 10,000. Yeah, but also, I don't know, I get a sense that the sort of timekeeping part, the maker of time, the guy who makes sweet clocks, I feel like that is very unthreatening and kind of important in a way. And I'm so curious about where that's headed. Like that to me is the most interesting part of Ikariam is his tinkering.
Yes.
And I feel like we're only getting the very, very tip of the iceberg on that so far.
I agree. And I feel like there's weight to it. Like he wants to create these timekeeping devices that will never break. That's what like the Heartwood would offer.
Right. Yeah.
But why does he care so much about making the time? He just wants people to know what time it is, or is he, is it like there's a countdown clock and it's the Lost Island all of a sudden we got to type in the thing or whatever?
Well, also, if he's the maker of time, is that just a fancy way of saying maker of things that keep time, or is it he's literally the maker of time? Like I'm very curious how part of me gets the vibe that in his creation of things that measure time, he is actually influencing time, the dimension of time.
Yeah.
So I want to know how that all plays.
Yeah.
Very curious about that. Anyway, so Fearless is like, you want horses? I got horses. And she's like, I bet there's going to be like
5, maybe
20
10
horses that show up. It's going to be some sweet horses for you to choose from. And then 1,500 horses are like, brrr.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. I really loved the scene of them being like, her being like, horses, and it being like the rumble of the earth.
Yeah.
Such that it renders her speechless because of the vibration of the hooves in the ground. It's interesting.
So rad. Also, a tidbit that deserves mention is that they seem to be on the spot of an Azath house, and the spear that made her seemed to have stabbed into the, what do you want to call it, seed of an Azath house.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty rad. And this was the exact, well, we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so she asks Karsa about bloodwood and blood oil. Super interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really get much from it other than she's super interested and it's important. And we know that the bloodwood and blood oil is kind of otaterol.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So.
Yeah.
Karsa wades into the horses and picks a horsey for himself. I thought that moment was rad. He's like, not that super sick, sweet stallion, because the group of horses need it more than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then he names the horse the same as his old horse's name, Havoc, right? It's the same name, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
He only knows one name for horses.
This one's Havoc Jr. Yeah, I liked it, and I liked the like how he picked it, and like seeing like the flexibility of the neck of the horse.
Incredible.
Yeah.
An incredible moment where he's like, let me check your neck, and yeah, that works. And
Hmm.
then Synagig is like, I never seen anybody tame a jag horse like that. You're awesome.
Hmm.
And they constantly tell him how big of a deal he is and what he's gonna do. And he's like, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet.
That's what I
I'm
think
gonna
is
do stuff.
interesting, because he's like, I'm gonna do stuff, but like other than him being like, I'm gonna save my people, I don't think we really know like what his like that he has
Yeah,
grander plans. And
right.
so, but like similar to like the first chapters where he's like, there's a plan, and they're like, here's all the reasons why we think it's a dumb plan. He's like, oh yeah, is it? What if we just did it? And then afterwards they're like, oh, it was a great plan for these reasons. So you know that he's, I don't want to say scheming, because that has like a little like a sneaky little vibe, but he does have some kind of larger plan, and I am very curious to see what that is and how it shakes out.
Here's my intuition on it, and I could totally be off base, but my intuition is that he has gotten to this place where he distrusts and actively rebels against the gods.
Yeah.
And he is becoming powerful enough to strike them down. And I think
Mm,
he will become a weapon against maybe the crippled god himself.
interesting.
Maybe, I feel like his role as he becomes more and more potent, more and more powerful, and more righteous in his beliefs about what gods are there to do and not do, and
Mm.
how they are somehow or sometimes unfair to their followers. I feel like he will. I don't know. That's my sense of
I
it.
think that's a good sense. I'm aligned.
Then we have the final scene of chapter 17 is just a Synagig alone with Fearless, and they talk about the Azath house and how uh, that's where Gothos, Ikariam's father, who we met when somebody went to the was it Perrin, I think, met
Yeah,
Gothos,
that
right?
whole crew.
Yeah. And that Ikariam nearly destroyed the house because it. So I feel like this was a kind of very brief but hugely impactful revelation, which was the fact that this house was under assault by Ikariam weakened the fabric, which allowed the warren to be shattered, which I think is the warren that has shattered and is a piece of the whirlwind is a piece and all those things. So like all of it comes down to Ikariam trying to break out his dad, and his dad doesn't even want to be broken out. His
Yeah.
dad wants to stay in the house. We know that already.
Hmm. Yeah, Ikariam's like involvement in sort of, it's interesting because like we spent so much time with him and we know he was very impactful, but like other than him having like violent outbursts and like making time stuff, like
Yeah.
the actual how he's interwoven through the things is the broader picture, I think has been pretty fuzzy. And this being like a very clear link of like the Warrens that we've talked about a long time, this like these shards of the Warrens,
Yeah.
he's directly responsible for and connected to. And he's floating around in this book. He's walking around
Yeah.
in the periphery of everything that's happened here with Mappo. So, uh, yeah,
Well, it's interesting because I feel like we're heading to a moment where the Tisliosin are going to try to kill him, and I think
I
that's
thought
going to
they
be
were going to
interesting.
try and recruit him.
Oh, maybe interesting.
I thought the
My reading
Tisliosin
was
were
they were going
like,
to go kill him, but
I thought they were like this world that's literally eating us alive and has like killed our guardian. Ostrich wants us to get revenge on them, and we will, in Ostrich's name, make sure that they feel this vengeance. You know who could help? Ikariam. Ikariam's here. We can sense him.
interesting.
Or maybe you're right. They were like
you might be
hunting
right.
him because they said that they were like felt a closeness to him, and that like they were
Well, I thought they were
searching
saying
for
he's
him.
close.
He's close, and I know they were like searching for him or something. And
Yeah.
maybe you're right that they were going to go kill him, but for some reason I was like, they're going to recruit him and try and get him to
Well,
like
either
kill
way,
everybody.
it's going to be interesting to see when that when they meet.
Yes.
And I also loved how this ended with the remaining 6 faces of the Unbound all like off to the side, like, is he gone? And
Or like admiring him from afar.
Fearless and Synagogue are like, oh, they're scared. They're scared of something. She's like, oh, they're scared of Akarium. He's like, no, I think they're scared of Karsa Orlong. Like, did he leave? Is he gone? Very fun. Awesome. I loved chapter 17. I thought chapter 17 was so fun.
Agreed.
And it had some big revelations, and I just love hanging out with Karsa, and I love his whole takedown of gods, and it was so good.
Yeah. Throughout it all, even though like his idea of like right and wrong and tolerable or intolerable has expanded so much, the way he meets those ideas and the way he comes across something that is not what he wants, he still treats in the same way. It's very black and white. It's like, no, what you're saying is bad and you're bad. Slice.
Yeah.
He has the consistency to him, even through his great change that I really appreciate. And yeah, I love it.
And that's the end of a sub-book. We're about to start sub-book 4, House of Chains.
House of Chains, House of Chains, baby.
Novel House of Chains. It feels like it's all happening. It's all happening. I'm very excited. Next week, 2 chapters. 2 chapters. But first, we got to talk about our quotes, our favorite passages from this section of reading. I have 2.
I have 2 as well.
I'm wondering if we have some overlap because
mine are super, super short.
Okay. What is your first one?
This one is the Crow Clan, the Burned Tears, talking with Timul right after he does his little speech. With the sound of a wave rolling up a league-long strand of beach, weapons were unsheathed along the ridge, a salute voiced by iron alone.
Such an awesome, you just feel like that rumble as they all, so cool. So
and
cool.
Specifically like that, just like that friction sound of like the flat of something rubbing against something else. Like maybe it's just because, I lived by the water for so long, but that specific frictiony sound, it just really, I could hear it. I could feel it.
So evocative.
I love it.
Here is a beautiful section. I could have read this entire moment with Karsa kind of taking down the gods, but I loved this phrasing of what's so wrong with taking the children. And he's talking to Sibyl. He says, no matter how brief a child's life, the love of the parents is a power that should not be denied. And know this, Sibyl, it is immune to imperfection.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I have what some might call an imperfect child as well, and it's a beautiful way of putting it,
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Sorry.
No.
What's your second one?
My second one is also incredibly brief. Solitude is an illusion, for every silence is filled by a clamorous search for meaning.
Man, a clamorous search for meaning. Right?
I feel like
the search is loud in the silence.
Loud in the silence. I feel like that's my brain every night before going to bed. Maybe not as deep as a search for meaning, but sort of an endless, there's no silence in my head. And so I love that. Felt real.
Yeah. I like this one too. I guess I have 2 more. This is Trull and Onrak talking, and Onrak is like, "Yeah, I used to paint. I was a painter. I was pretty into it. I was pretty into painting." And Trull goes, "And and now you enjoy killing." and Onrak replies, "Artistry finds new forms, Idur. It defies being silenced." I love that. Artistry finds new forms, Idur. It defies being silenced. I gotta be me. I gotta find ways to express myself. Maybe
I'm
it's killing,
creative.
you
I'm
know,
creative. I'm an
I can't
artist.
paint anymore. So good. I also love this section. This is also on Racontrell. He says, among a people where, oh no, sorry, it starts earlier. It was a simple truth that Onrak had grown skilled in the sorcery of paint out of that desire to be apart, to be alone. Among a people where solitude was as close to a crime as possible, where to separate was to weaken, where the very breaking of vision into its components, from seeing to observing, from resurrecting memory and reshaping it beyond the eye's reach onto the walls of stone, demanded a fine-edged, potentially deadly propensity. It's like,
Ooh.
I did this to be alone, and I wasn't even supposed to be alone, and even doing it was transgressive.
Yeah.
It's like art pulls at you to do these things that are even can be self-destructive. Beautifully put, I thought.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. I love the polls that you get. I think that because of the way I read, some of the times, like the things that are most resonant with me are the things I skip because I'm just so mentally deep into it that I live through it and I'm like, wow, that was really beautiful. And it takes a lot for me to like stop and highlight something. And so often it's these smaller, stickier things where it actually goes, wow, that's a really beautiful description. And like, I want to feel it. And I like sit there and I think about it and I try and hear it in my head, that I find that my sentences are so often very tactile. And I love the reflection of the sentences that you pull that is often just, sometimes we have this parallel, but often it speaks to more to the heart and more to like philosophy about the world, and I just really appreciate the sentences that you pull and appreciate your passion as always.
I love that we are different things resonate with us, and I love hearing the sentences you pull, you know, that and hearing them with new ears. It's awesome to be. Sometimes hearing these sentences out of context, it makes them sing even more, you know. It's just lovely writing, incredible prose, and so much fun to go through these books with you and with all of you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks for reading along. We have, like I said, 2 chapters next week as we delve into what I think is the final subbook, I believe. I don't know, maybe not. But it's we're getting into the meat of it, baby. We're in it. Please continue to send us questions for the beginning of the show for the non-spoiler section. We love getting those. dlcfeedback@gmail.com is where you can send them, or you can hang out in our Discord, which is 5x5 DLC on Discord. There's a book club section. Lots of fun discussion happening. There's an entire thread that's the Malazan Book of the Fallen thread that I've never been in because I can't trust myself. I don't know what's going on in there, but it's for the entire series and we haven't read the entire series, and I'm so scared of spoilers that I just haven't gone in. There's a couple of, you know how it shows you the symbol if your name has been mentioned, and people have mentioned my name and they're sorry, I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to see it.
Unless it's like in the chapters or in the book or previous books.
Right.
It's hard for me to get in there because like, I feel like even things that people won't think are spoilers, I'll like read it and it will stick in my brain, and anything that like hits that later, I'll be like, oh, that's what they were talking about. I'm with you. It's hard for me to read, but please, everybody, like I love seeing people in there talking about it. I love seeing people who are sort of further ahead in their journeys having a space to just talking it out. I can't wait to read 1,000 messages when we finish the series.
Me too. I'm going to go have so much fun going back. But people have been so awesome and respectful using the spoiler tag so that, you know, you have to highlight text and press the button in order to reveal it. I really appreciate all the efforts that people go through. And I'm reading the current book stuff and previous books, but it's just the like main series heading one. I just have never been inside. And thank you, folks. We will see you next time. Until then, you know, take a second and dance it out.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages and start It's just some means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club.